There is a moment, soft and nearly imperceptible, when a woman reaches out and pulls a man closer during intimacy. It is not always dramatic, not always overt, but it carries a language older than words. In that brief gesture, there is a story being told, one of longing, of trust, of wanting to feel not just the body in front of her, but the presence behind it. We often think intimacy is about the mechanics of touch, but the truth is that the most powerful moments happen in the space between two breaths, when closeness becomes a way of saying, "Stay with me. Be here with me. Don't drift away." The instinct to pull someone closer during intimacy often emerges from a deep, almost primal desire for emotional and physical safety. It is not a conscious calculation, nor is it a rehearsed gesture. Instead, it is a bodily truth surfacing in a tender moment. When a woman reaches out and draws a man into her space, she is responding to the ancient wiring in all of us that associates closeness with comfort, reassurance, and trust. Human beings are relational by design. We seek contact not only for pleasure but for grounding. In moments of intimacy, the body becomes a communicator, sometimes more honest than words, revealing what the heart may not yet know how to articulate. Pulling someone closer is one of these instinctive expressions, a way of saying, "I feel safe enough to let you near without having to speak it aloud." Safety in intimacy goes far beyond the physical act itself. It encompasses emotional safety, the reassurance that vulnerability will be met with gentleness rather than judgment. When a woman pulls a man closer, she is often signaling that she feels emotionally held, that the moment is secure enough for her to soften rather than guard herself. It is a gesture that communicates trust, signaling that she does not fear withdrawal, indifference, or rejection in that moment. This sense of safety allows her to surrender into the experience rather than stay hyperaware or self-protective. The closer she pulls, the more she signals that she feels anchored, not exposed. There is also a powerful physiological layer to this instinct. The human body releases oxytocin, often called the bonding hormone, during moments of touch, closeness, and arousal. This hormone creates a calming effect, reducing anxiety and strengthening feelings of connection and security. The pull for closeness is, in part, the body's way of inviting more of that soothing chemistry, aligning the emotional and physical experiences into a unified state of intimacy. The desire for nearness becomes both a biological comfort and an emotional affirmation. Moreover, pulling someone closer can be a way of bridging any perceived emotional distance. Even during physical intimacy, the mind can wander, fears can surface, and insecurities can whisper. The gesture serves as a reminder that both people are still here, still connected, still in the same moment. It anchors the interaction, bringing both partners into a shared emotional space. Rather than allowing the experience to feel fragmented or mechanical, it restores the sense of being fully present with each other. For many women, this closeness transforms intimacy into a shared emotional landscape rather than merely a physical act. Intimacy becomes richer and more meaningful when vulnerability is met with presence rather than performance. In so many relationships, people enter intimate moments with a quiet pressure to impress, satisfy, or execute some imagined standard of what passion should look like. This creates a sense of performing rather than connecting. But the body can always feel the difference. When a woman pulls a man closer, it is often an invitation to abandon the choreography and step into something more real, something attuned. Vulnerability in these moments is not just about removing clothes, it is about removing the layers of emotional armor that keep people from feeling truly seen. For her, the pull signifies a desire for him to stop trying to be impressive and start being present, to feel rather than overthink, to connect rather than perform. Presence means entering the moment with full awareness of her breathing, her signals, her emotional state, and your own. It is the capacity to stay with the experience instead of drifting into anxiety, distraction, or self-judgment. When he meets her vulnerability with grounded presence, intimacy softens, deepens, and expands. She can sense when his attention is split, when he is trying to prove something, or when he is lost in performance instead of connection. The instinct to pull him closer is a way of recentering the moment, gathering both partners into the same emotional space, reminding him that intimacy is not a task but a dialogue. It is a moment where she is asking for attunement, not perfection. Vulnerability requires immense courage, especially in intimate settings where insecurities and unspoken fears often rise to the surface. For many women, physical closeness amplifies emotional exposure. If that vulnerability is met with distance, distraction, or ego-driven performance, it creates disconnection. But when it is met with presence, with a man who listens with his body, responds with sensitivity, and holds the moment without rushing or performing, it creates a profound sense of safety. Her gesture of pulling closer becomes a way of aligning two emotional rhythms, fusing the physical experience with emotional truth. This presence allows intimacy to move from mechanical to meaningful. Touch becomes communication. Breath becomes synchronization. Connection becomes mutual rather than one-sided. She can relax into the moment because she senses that he is not just there physically but emotionally as well. And when a man responds to her vulnerability with presence, he affirms her worth, her desirability, and her trust. It transforms the encounter into a shared exploration rather than a performance to be judged, allowing both partners to feel more connected, more grounded, and more alive within the moment. The pull for closeness during intimacy is far less about control than it is about connection. It is a moment where the body reaches out not to direct or dominate, but to invite. Many people misunderstand this instinctive gesture, imagining that it reflects a desire to steer the moment or influence what happens next. But in truth, it is a quiet call for emotional alignment, a way of saying, "Meet me here," without interrupting the flow with words. When a woman pulls a man closer, she is not trying to manipulate the dynamic, she is trying to deepen it. She is signaling that the emotional and physical rhythms between them are on the edge of synchronizing, and she wants to bring those rhythms fully into harmony. In intimate moments, silence can be both powerful and uncertain. Without verbal communication, partners must rely on touch, breath, and instinct to feel where the other person emotionally stands. The gesture of pulling someone closer is a bridge across that silence. It is a way of anchoring the connection and ensuring that both people are moving together rather than existing in parallel experiences. For her, this pull becomes a reassurance that the moment is shared, not separate. It becomes an expression of desire for unity rather than an attempt at direction. She is asking for closeness because closeness is where she feels the full presence of her partner, where she senses his emotional availability as much as his physical presence. Connection requires more than willingness, it requires responsiveness. And responsiveness is often felt in the small, subtle adjustments two bodies make toward each other. The pull closer is one of these adjustments. It is her way of checking that his attention, his affection, and his energy are aligned with hers. Not as a test, but as an invitation. She wants him not just near her, but with her, emotionally tuned, mentally present, physically engaged. It is in this unity that intimacy becomes fulfilling rather than transactional. By pulling him closer, she is encouraging the moment to become more attuned, more affectionate, more synchronized. There is a deep emotional intelligence within this gesture. It reflects an understanding that intimacy is not sustained by technique alone but by mutual engagement. She pulls him closer because she senses a moment where connection can expand, where desire can be felt not just as heat but as closeness, understanding, and mutual presence. The pull becomes a form of communication that says she values the emotional energy he brings more than anything he might try to perform. It is her way of shaping the moment into something shared, something reciprocal, something that feels deeply human and profoundly connected. Desire does not thrive on intensity alone, it thrives in moments of attunement, where two people feel responsive to each other's signals, rhythms, and emotions. When a woman pulls a man closer during intimacy, she is often seeking this synchronization, a subtle merging of presence and energy. Intimacy becomes most alive not in the performance of passion but in the responsiveness between partners, how one adjusts when the other leans in, how breath aligns naturally, how the body senses and mirrors what it receives. This is where desire becomes dynamic rather than mechanical, where two people are not simply engaging in physical closeness but are entering a shared emotional space that heightens every sensation. The pull closer becomes her way of guiding both partners into that space of mutual awareness, where desire feels fluid, connected, and deeply human. In relationships, desire tends to fade not because attraction disappears but because attunement breaks down. People become distracted, preoccupied, or emotionally distant. Intimacy then becomes something that is done rather than something that is felt. Her pull is a way of pulling the moment back into alignment, reminding both individuals that connection is an active process, not a passive one. It is her body's language for saying. This attunement is also where emotional intimacy and physical intimacy blend seamlessly. As both partners become more responsive to each other, desire evolves from something purely physical into something relational. It becomes a dialogue of touch and breath, a shared emotional cadence that amplifies connection. When she pulls him closer, she is not just seeking proximity, she is seeking this harmony, this co-created space where both partners feel engaged, present, and connected on multiple levels. It is within this attuned space that desire becomes vibrant, meaningful, and deeply fulfilling. Closeness in intimacy is rarely about physical nearness alone. It is about the feeling of being emotionally seen, chosen, and held, sometimes without a single word needing to be spoken. When a woman pulls a man closer, the gesture often reflects something far deeper than the mechanics of touch. It is her way of reinforcing a sense of connection that transcends the physical moment. Physical closeness becomes the vessel through which emotional closeness is expressed. In that pull, she may be affirming her desire to be understood, to be recognized not just as a body but as a person with emotions, vulnerabilities, and longings that deserve to be acknowledged. It is an unspoken call to be present, to be engaged, to offer more than proximity, to offer presence that reassures her she matters in the moment. Many women crave intimacy that resonates emotionally as much as physically. Being close is comforting, but feeling understood is transformative. When she pulls a man closer, she may be signaling that she wants the experience to be infused with meaning. She wants him to register her expressions, her breath, the subtle shifts that communicate desire, comfort, or emotion. This is where she feels valued, not because of what she offers physically, but because she is met emotionally. The closeness becomes a form of validation, not in the sense of ego, but in the sense of connection. It tells her she is not just seen but chosen, appreciated, and understood in ways that words might not easily capture. There is also a quiet emotional reassurance in being held closely. Many people carry hidden insecurities, fears of not being enough, of being misunderstood, of being emotionally distant from those they care about. When a woman pulls her partner closer, she may be bridging gaps created by those fears. She may be creating a space where emotional safety can exist alongside physical pleasure. The closeness becomes a sanctuary, a moment where she can trust that she is cared for and connected to someone who is present with her. It allows the experience to feel whole rather than fragmented, turning the encounter into something that nurtures both body and heart. In this way, closeness becomes an emotional language of its own. The pull closer expresses desires that are difficult to verbalize, the desire to be cherished, the longing to feel aligned, the need for connection that feels personal and intentional. It transforms intimacy from something that happens between two bodies into something that happens between two inner worlds. It is a moment where she is not just seeking physical connection but emotional resonance. When she feels seen in this way, the intimacy becomes not just pleasurable but grounding, affirming, and deeply fulfilling.